Hey, welcome everybody. Welcome back to a special Saturday morning edition of the Law of Self-Defense show. I am, of course, attorney Andrew Branca for Law of Self-Defense. Thank you. Always so kind of everybody. I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. Glad you could all join me. Sorry, I'm a few minutes late. I thought I had everything set up, ready to go, but I had a couple of little delays getting some of the videos ready. But here we are today to talk about the Chase Allan shooting in Utah that occurred on March 1st, shot and killed by police officers, a whole bunch of police officers, a whole bunch of rounds fired. We even had a relatively rare mag reload by the police as they were engaging Chase Allan, who, of course, whose family is describing his death as murder. Naturally, it's how families tend to view these things. No particular criticism of the family per se. Obviously, they've suffered a terrible loss. I'm completely sympathetic. It would have been nice if they'd raised a more prudent son, but we'll get to all of that. This is not really a show so much about the law, folks, although of course I'll cover the law, the use of force law, the relevant issues here. This is largely a cautionary tale about being realistic and using common sense and understanding that being right is overrated when the consequence can be death at the muzzle of a gun. As always, folks, if questions come up that you have that you'd like me to answer, our typical format is in effect, meaning if you're watching this on YouTube Live and you'd like to post a question, get it answered, it needs to be a super chat, $5 minimum super chat. If you're on Rumble, same thing. It needs to be a Rumble rant, $5 minimum super chat. If you're a Law Self-Defense member and you're watching this on the member dashboard and you're in the chat, and the chat should be working. Let me take a quick look. It is working. Then feel free to ask as many questions as you want in the chat for free. Of course, that's part of your membership. I do ask that you preface the question with the word question in all capitals, so it's easy for me to discern it from the chatter in the background. The member chat doesn't color code things like YouTube and Rumble do. And by the way, folks, if you're not a Law Self-Defense member, I have to ask why. They get all their questions answered for no cost above their membership, and the membership's only about 30 cents a day, less than $10 a month. So instead of paying $5 a question on YouTube or Rumble, you could be paying 30 cents a day to get all your questions answered. Less than $10 a month. You could do that right now at lawofselfdefense.com/join. Become a Law Self-Defense member. Get all your questions answered for less than $10 a month, folks. It's pretty straightforward. That's lawofselfdefense.com/join. Let's see, before we dive into the merits, you can still join. You don't have to be an American to join. We only cover American law. But we have a lot of foreign members. They just find the content interesting. Europeans in particular are fascinated by American use of force law because it's so different in application than what they have in Europe. And of course, we have the additional, I guess they would call it a complication. I would call it a feature, not a glitch, of being a nation awash in firearms. That's a good thing, not a bad thing. All right, before we dive into the substance, so just to give you a sense, we'll probably go less than an hour today. I have a little, like a 3-minute news version of the body-worn camera. It doesn't show the actual shooting itself. I'll do that first to give us some context. I'll go through kind of a news article, how the media is presenting this case, a few of my own thoughts, and then we have about a half-hour debrief by the police department itself. The police chief gets up in front of the media. They've prepared a video presentation for the media and for the public, and we'll play that and stop occasionally, make comments, have an opportunity for you to ask questions and so forth. So that's what you should expect to happen from today's show. Shouldn't take up too much of your time on a Saturday. Before I do dive into all that, of course, I should mention that today's content is sponsored by none other than Law of Self-Defense itself, our upcoming Law Self-Defense Advanced class taking place on Saturday, April 15th. This is a full day class taught live by me, streamed to you at your computer to teach you how to be hard to convict, to be an unattractive target for prosecution if you're ever compelled to use force in defense of yourself, your family, your property. Folks, self-defense as a legal defense is very binary. It's like an old school light switch. It's on or off. Either you qualify or you don't. Either your use of force was within the legal boundaries or it wasn't. And if it wasn't, you have no legal defense of self-defense. It doesn't exist. Don't be that person. Be the person who's within the legal boundaries. Because if you are genuinely hard to convict. The state knows they have to disprove your legitimate claim of self-defense beyond a reasonable doubt. That's hard to do if you did your job. Unfortunately, what most of you think you know about self-defense law and your privilege to use defensive force is wrong. You know a lot, but most of it's mistaken. In my experience, don't let that continue. Don't leave yourself vulnerable to being an easy conviction, an easy target for a prosecutor. Learn how to be hard to convict. At the Law of Self-Defense Advanced class on Saturday, April 15th. This is the only one of these scheduled for 2023, folks. When are you going to be attacked? When are you going to need to defend yourself? Are you sure it's not going to happen until 2024? Of course not, because it's not up to us. We don't get to pick the time, place, and manner of the attack. The bad guy does that. You need to be prepared, well, yesterday. But I can't hold the class yesterday, so we scheduled it for Saturday, April 15th. And if you sign up for the class this month, the month of April, you get 10% off your registration. If it's at all of interest, I encourage you to go to that URL on the screen, lawofselfdefense.com/advanced. There's a longer video of me explaining the class in more detail, including the more than 100 very specific use of force law questions that we address in the class. Plus, we promise to address every question answered during the class. Now, I have to be honest. Sometimes there are hours of questions answered during the class. And if that's the case, we do an hour or two that day, and then I'll answer the other questions in subsequent videos for the people registered for the class. By the way, if you can't make it on Saturday, April 15th, if you have a scheduling conflict, I would still urge you to sign up for the class because we'll make the playback of the class available to all the registered students. So you can watch the playback afterwards at your convenience. Or if you were there Saturday, April 15th, you could watch the class again if there's stuff that you'd like to refresh your recollection on. It is a fire hose of information, folks. It's 8 hours of me talking like this at this pace. So you can imagine how much content it is. I would encourage you to learn more and register right now. Just open up another tab on your browser at lawofselfdefense.com/advanced. All right. Let's see. Let me move this microphone around a little bit. I have a different coffee mug today. I got to the office and all my Law of Self-Defense mugs are off being cleaned. So looking back, Texas. I've been there on the motorcycle the last couple of years. And it's nice. I like that part of Texas. In fact, I'll be going back. It looks like early April. I'll be going back to meet up with a couple of guys. Some of you may know, donut operator, AK guy, and some other famous Texas gun type influencers. So I'm very, very much looking forward to that. When I have more details and if it seems appropriate to share, I will do that. Luke in back, someone says. All right. Yeah, it's a nice mug. All right. So what do we have here? We have Chase Allan. Chase Allan. In fact, maybe I'll just pull up the news report. And we'll step through their description of events. So here is that headline. Footage shows 5 Utah cops fire into BMW of man during traffic stop. Well, this video doesn't show that, but we'll see the full-length video, and that certainly does show 5 cops firing into a BMW. Weird that they would do that, right? Was it just a hobby, just random chance? I don't think so. Yeah, I don't think I'll have time this trip to Texas to meet up with Kurt again. I'm only going to be there for one day, so it's going to be a quick trip. All right, back to Chase. Authorities, now quoting the news report here, authorities released footage of 5 Utah cops yelling, "Gun, gun, gun," and firing a barrage of bullets into the BMW of a man who was pulled over and then refused most of the officer's commands before shots rang out. The body cam video detailed the moment police officers in Farmington, a Salt Lake City suburb, shot and killed 25-year-old Chase Allan on March 1st. He refused to hand over his driver's license and declined other police commands as he recited anti-governmental views, footage indicates. So I don't even know what they mean by anti-governmental reviews. What he started spouting was a bunch of sovereign citizen stuff. You don't have jurisdiction over me. We'll see in the video all kinds of and yeah, listen, maybe some of you in the audience believe that stuff, and that's fine. You're a free country. You're privileged to believe it. It's not going to help you at a traffic stop because nobody else at that stop also believes it. So they're going to conduct themselves consistent with their view of society and the law and legal privilege, not your sovereign citizen view of how things should be in your perfect world. Continuing, Farmington Police Chief Eric Johnson, he's the guy that does the longer half-hour debrief that we'll go through, said officers only fired after Allan reached down to what... Did it spell his name 2 different ways, or did I misspell his name? Oh, maybe I misspelled it. Farmington Police Chief Eric Johnson said officers only fired after Allan reached down to what the cops believed could be a holster or a gun. It's weird that they would report it that way because, in fact, it was a holstered gun. That's what it was. But Johnson, during a Wednesday press conference, which is what we're going to watch in a moment, also acknowledged the footage is not clear leading up to the shooting because the body cam's view of Allan's hip holster is blocked by the car door and an officer leaning in to yank him out just as another cop warned of a gun. Well, of course, folks, body cameras don't capture 360 degrees horizontally and vertically. They're not omniscient. They're not all seeing. The body camera only captures what the body camera captures. But one thing it does capture is this guy moving his right hand down to a holstered gun at his waistline. Of course, the media has the very nice, prom photo of this dude. When we see him in the car, he looks like the stereotypical image of a drug dealer to me. That doesn't mean he is one, of course. Maybe he just wants to present as if he were one. Young men present themselves as faux bad boys all the time. Continuing, the footage and photos show a handgun on the floor of the car. Footage also shows an empty holster on Allan's hip. Well, an empty holster means the gun came out. That's not good for the anti-police view of this event. When the officer originally approached the car in a post office parking lot, he told Allan he was pulled over for what police later called an illegitimate license plate. Now, I'm not familiar with how Utah does their license plates. Here in Colorado, and even back in Massachusetts, when you got your registration for the car, I know taxation is theft. I get it, folks. Nevertheless, that's the rule. When you get the registration for your car, you also get a little sticker with the last 2 digits of the year on it. You put that sticker on your rear license plate, and that's an exterior indicator on the car that a police officer can conveniently view that tells them whether it's likely your registration is up to date or not. And if it's not up to date, you can get pulled over and he'll ask to see a paper registration because you're required to have your car registered in order to operate it on the public roads in the normal course of operating a vehicle. There's a couple very rare exceptions to that, generally speaking, but normally operating a car has to be registered. Cops look for that sticker. Yes, they will park at a rotary or an intersection and watch all the cars go by and shoot fish in a barrel looking for out-of-date tags. That's something police do. They're allowed to do that. Maybe that's what they were doing here. In any case, the tag was out of date. So they pulled him over or they followed him to where he stopped. Either way, it's not clear. And they said, well, we need to see your registration. And Chase Allan, 25 years old, the driver of this BMW, looks like a 3 Series, tells him, I don't need a registration and I don't answer questions. Said Allan, a former college soccer player, after he was asked the question. Well, you don't have to answer questions, folks. You don't have to say anything. you do have to identify yourself. And if you're operating a vehicle, you do have to provide the documentation that you're required to provide when you're operating a vehicle on the public roads. And that could include registration and insurance, as well as your driver's license. Now, you could do all that silently. And every time the cops ask you a question, you could just remain silent. That's your privilege. You could tell them, I'm not answering questions. I'm not answering questions. I'm not answering questions. That's what my buddy Nick Ricada suggests you do. And it's not bad advice. But not answering questions doesn't mean that there are no requirements for you to comply with anything. But Chase Allan apparently believes he doesn't need a registration to operate a vehicle on the public roads. That's not correct. The article, continues. The cop then called for backup. Very prudent. He immediately calls for more units. Not angry, just clearly when he starts hearing all the sovereign citizen stuff, he's like, all right, this is not a normal traffic stop. He warned Allan, the direction this encounter goes is 100% in your hands, as the two argued over the law. They weren't really arguing, except the cop was saying, you do have to identify yourself and provide registration. And Allan was saying he didn't. Who's correct there? It's not Allan. Allan eventually provided a passport, but refused to leave the car after a demand from the officers, the footage shows. And as we'll see in the video, this car, the windows are very darkly tinted. He only opens up the driver's window a tiny little crack, like these sovereign citizens like to do at traffic stops. And it's difficult for safety purposes, for example, for the officer to know if there might be other people in the vehicle, other people in the back seat. The article continues. Another officer threatened to break the window of the car to drag him out. By the way, folks, if you're in a vehicle, you're driving, operating a vehicle on a public way for all practical purposes, there's almost always probable cause for a stop. It may be BS probable cause, but it's enough probable cause for a stop. That's just the nature of the environment. Continuing, the footage shows Allan holding a phone in his right hand before switching it to his left hand, which freed up the hand closer to his holster moments before the cops fired. Exactly like someone, by the way, his phone was in his right hand apparently because he was recording the interaction with the police. Speaking of police, that's almost certainly fire. If you can hear the sirens in the background, they're not coming for me, folks. I have a fire station 2 blocks from my office. So someone got into an accident, I guess. So he was recording on this phone, the phone in his right hand, Chase Allan, the driver of the car, his interaction with police, which is fine. It just keeps getting louder. And in fact, that Chase Allan is doing that with the phone in his right hand may have been a modest reassurance to the cops he's interacting with, because his right hand is occupied with something that's effectively harmless, a cell phone. But then when he switches the phone to his left hand, frees up the right hand, and they can see a gun and holster, and his hand goes for the gun and holster at his waist, that turns into a bad day for Chase Allan. Continuing, an officer opened the driver's door and Allan made a move, though it's uncertain whether it was to unbuckle his seatbelt or to go for the holster. You think the cops have to wait to see which one it is before they have a reasonable perception of an imminent deadly force threat? Nope. An officer then yelled gun as the 5 cops moved around the vehicle and started shooting from every direction before stopping moments later. It wasn't really every direction, but it was quite a fusillade of fire. Before shots were fired by police, no gun was visible in the holster or anywhere else in the footage. Well, that's not true. That's true in the footage that the media has here, but not, as we'll see in the longer debrief by the police chief. It's not correct. And of course, the officers are saying they saw the gun before they fired, right? Allan was taken to the hospital and later pronounced dead. Police have not alleged Allan fired a gun during the confrontation. Well, why would they? He doesn't need to fire the gun before the police are privileged to use deadly force in self-defense against in reasonably perceived imminent force threat. Deadly force threat. Allan's family has sharply criticized the department and alleged their loved one died in a brutal murder while Allan sat in his car, likely terrified, according to reports. He doesn't look terrified. Allan's relatives also claim the police were stonewalling them and didn't notify them of Chase's death. They reportedly found out through the media. Well, of course, we don't know about that. Generally speaking, there's no reason for the police not to attempt to notify death of next of kin. Perhaps they attempted, and next of kin, like me, maybe they don't answer the phone when the caller ID is an unknown number. So if you call my phone and it displays a number unfamiliar to me, that call doesn't get answered. Leave a message. I'll check the voicemail later. So that's what the media has to report. Let's now pull up the short version of the video. This is the one that was embedded in that media report. This one does not show the actual shooting. It cuts off a moment before the shooting. By the way, folks, I am going to show you the actual shooting. So instantaneously, YouTube at least is going to demonetize today's show. If that would encourage any of you to do something like make a super chat, or perhaps simply avail yourself of a free copy of our best-selling book, The Law of Self-Defense Principles. That would certainly be helpful. Check out this book on Amazon. Over 1,200 reviews, 4.8 star out of 5 rated. There's always 0.2 jerks in the crowd, folks. 4.8, let's round that up to 5-star rated for my purposes. Bestseller in Amazon's criminal law segment. But don't buy the book on Amazon because they'll charge you for the book and shipping and handling. Get the book from us directly from lawofselfdefense.com because we'll give you the book for free. We do ask you to cover the cost of shipping the book to you. We have to pay the U.S. Postal Service. We have to pay our warehouse guys. But if you pay the shipping and handling, we'll give you the book for free. We'll eat the cost of the book. You can get this book, the softcover version, real book, not just a PDF download, at lawofselfdefense.com/free book. Alternatively, you can get the very handsome hardcover version of that same book. Makes a wonderful gift. Father's Day is coming up, folks. You can get the hardcover version of that book. You all know where. At lawofselfdefense.com/gethard. So any of that would be appreciated. All right, let me pull up the short version. So this does not show any violence, but it does show the initial interaction. The cop, it starts basically from the cop walking up to Chase Allan's BMW and stops basically the moment before the shots are fired. I believe we do hear, gun, gun, gun being shouted, and then this video ends. And we'll get to the longer video. This is just one body-worn camera angle, but the longer 30-minute debrief has multiple angles and much more comprehensive information. But I figured we'd start here just to provide that initial context. So here we go. In fact, let me do this so it's even a little bit larger. And we're off to the races, I think.
How's it going?
Good, how are you?
Good, I'm Officer Farmington Police. The reason for the stop today is there's no registration on your vehicle.
I don't need registration and I don't answer questions.
Alrighty. Davis, Fox 21. Can you have a couple more heading my way?
I'm going to bump up the volume a little bit, folks, just because Chase is a little hard to hear. Let's see. That'll make the cop pretty loud, though. So if you're wearing earbuds or hearing protection, headphones, keep that in mind.
Is this back window roll down?
Why do you need to know that?
I just want to make sure that you're the only one in the vehicle. So here's the deal, man. I'm stopping you because there's no registration on your vehicle, and I'm requesting your identification. Okay? You are detained at this time, and you are not free to leave. Are you going to provide me your identification?
I don't answer.
I'm Officer Farmington Police. The reason for the stop today is there's no registration on your vehicle.
Hit pause.
And I don't answer questions.
He doesn't have to give registration, and he doesn't have to answer questions. Well, you don't have to answer questions. That's true. You do have to provide your registration and your driver's license, and in some states, proof of insurance.
Alrighty. Davis, Fox 21. Can you have a couple more heading my way? Is this back window roll down?
Why do you need to know that?
I just want to make sure that you're the only one in the vehicle. So here's the deal, man. I'm stopping you because there's no registration on your vehicle, and I'm requesting your identification. Okay? You are detained at this time, and you are not free to leave. Are you going to provide me your identification?
I don't answer questions.
Okay, so I'm going to take that as a no, that you're not going to provide me your identification. Is that the route we're going? or would you like to provide your identification to me? We can have a conversation. We can discuss the laws that you're breaking, and then we can go from there.
If you want my identification, you'll be under duress, and you accept surety and trusteeship over it. Meaning you over your.
Can you hear him? Can you hear? I mean, I can barely hear him over the sirens in my office, for Pete's sake. But Chase is basically saying, if I provide you with these documents, I'm doing it under objection, under duress, and he's asking the cop to promise surety and protection or insurance or indemnification against damages. If it's very, I don't really know what pseudo-political nonsense he's spouting, but that's the kind of stuff the cop is dealing with here.
Surety and trusteeship over it.
Surety and
You will
trusteeship.
be responsible for any debts that you're trying to incur here.
Okay, so I'm not trying to incur any debts or anything. I'm trying to investigate why your vehicle doesn't have any registration.
1692, you are trying to incur debt and legal action for something
Okay.
that is not allowed.
Okay,
And under
So,
Title 18, Section
here's-
245,
here's the-
traveling is a federally protected activity. which
I
is
understand what you're saying.
involved in.
I understand.
So all the all the stuff that Chase Allan is saying, I guess he believes it. I don't know. Folks, it may even be true, but it doesn't matter. It's not true, by the way. But if we were to pretend that all this stuff that Chase Allan is spouting were true, does it matter? At a traffic stop, whether he's right? Did it keep him alive? Of course, it's all nonsense. But even if we wanted to pretend it was true, it doesn't matter.
Understand what you're saying, and what I'm telling you is that you do not have an option to identify yourself.
I do.
You are lawfully required to identify yourself. So you can provide your identification to me, and we can have a conversation about the laws that you've broken, or you can fail to identify it to me, and we can go that route too. I'm perfectly okay with either way you want to go, but the direction that this encounter goes is 100% in your hands.
Sir,
Yep, that's how that works, folks. That's how that works. 99.99999% of the time dealing with law enforcement. There's a lot of law enforcement out there in America. Are there bad apples? Sure. They are an infinitesimal minority. The vast majority of the time, overwhelming majority of the time, it's not the cop who's deciding how the interaction is going to go. It's the driver or the suspect who's deciding how that interaction is going to go. They decide how much force is going to be used, when force is going to be used, when force is going to stop being used.
Utah Code, United States Code,
Okay?
is a corporate policy
Okay.
in which you have to be contracted in to be required to follow it. Unless you
Okay.
can provide me a contract with my wet ink signature on it saying that I'm required to follow it,
Okay?
then there is
So do you
nothing
wanna-
I'm obligated.
do you-
Whoever brainwashed this kid, 25-year-old man, whoever brainwashed him into this nonsense and told him to argue this at a traffic stop, killed him.
Want to identify yourself to me, or do you want to go a different route? Wonderful. Do you have a driver license as well?
I am not giving you jurisdiction.
Okay.
Do not
And-
stop.
He's not. Chase Allan is not giving the police officer jurisdiction. Is it up to Chase Allan whether or not this officer has the legal privilege to stop him and demand identification, registration? No. Chase Allan doesn't make those rules. Society makes those rules.
Do not detain. You are not allowed to stop me.
Let me see that.
On your list
I
saying that
didn't
you're
see
not
what you
allowed
just
to-
tried to show me. Can you show that to me again?
So I guess at this point, Chase Allan is he's got a passport with him. He's holding the passport like up by the crack of the window, but not actually providing it.
What's this?
This is a passport. It says, do not stay up, do not detain. And if you go on to the first page,
Okay.
it says, the United States hereby requests all who may it concern
Okay.
to permit the citizens
Here's what I'm telling you.
of the United States named herein
Here's what I'm telling you.
without delay or hindrance.
Okay.
You are
Will you hand that to me so I can read it? You want me to look at it through this tiny crack in your
I am not
window?
handing it to you.
You're not going to hand it to me?
If I hand this to you, you accept trusteeship and surety, and you are obligated.
Sure, I'll accept
Yeah.
trusting ship if you just hand me the document so I can identify who you are because you're required by state law.
I am not
Thank you so much, Mr. Chase Allan.
That is not me. That is a piece of plastic paper.
This is like that's not me, he says. That's a piece of plastic paper. As if somebody might be confused between the passport and the actual biological person. Much like Daryl Brooks was saying it wasn't him in court, if you'll remember.
So you have a fraudulent passport?
No.
Wonderful. That's what I'm hearing. Okay, step out of the car for me.
No.
Sir, step out of the vehicle right now.
I am not required to.
Step out of this vehicle right now.
So just imagine if it were true that he was not required to step out of the vehicle at this point. All right, let's pretend that's the case. Let's pretend that the cop is out of his mind, doesn't know what the law is. Doesn't matter. If the cops think that you are required to get out of the car and they're privileged to physically remove you from the vehicle, you think they're not going to do that because you tell them they don't have the authority? Or you think you're going to be physically removed from the vehicle? Let's use some common sense here, folks.
Now,
Then we're going to have an
by the way, you are required to get out under these circumstances. Again, if the situation involves you operating a motor vehicle, there's almost always probable cause.
issue
Sir,
where you're
step
gonna
out
have
of the car right now.
Don't step out of the car. We're going to break the window and pull you out. Step out of the car.
Gun, 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 gun.
All right, so that's where the short video ends. Gun, 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 and the shots are fired immediately after that. And it's not just a few shots, folks. It is a lot of shots. No surprise, Chase Allan did not survive this encounter. And again, we'll touch upon the legal issues here as we go through. They're not really complicated. The cops are privileged to make traffic stops. They're privileged to ask the operator of the vehicle, at least the operator, for identification, registration, insurance in most states. They're allowed to do that. If you don't have your license on you, are they going to arrest you? Probably not. I mean, I've had that happen. I've been stopped and I was like running to Home Depot because I was doing repairs around the house and I forgot to bring my driver's license. You provide them with your information. They run it. They know you have a license. Maybe they'll give you a ticket for not having the license on you. But generally, if you're in the system and everything checks out, they just send you on your way. If you act like an a-hole, might you get yourself arrested? Yeah, you might. So let's not do that. It's not necessary. All right. So before I go into the long video here, this is the half-hour one. This is the police chief here, who's going to do the debrief for the media and by extension for the public. Let me take a quick look and see if we have any questions that need to be answered already. Let's see. Law Self-Defense members, Chuck, Mike, Greg, D, Doug, all the usual suspects. Thanks for coming in, guys. I know it's a Saturday morning. Yes, this guy comes across very much like Daryl Brooks. And Law Self-Defense member Dave says, Andrew, just so you know, the sirens in the background near your office really are not disturbing or distracting. As a listener, you probably hear them much louder. Yes, they sound very loud to me. They come in through my microphones and right into my earbuds, very loud. But if you guys hear them at a lower volume, that's good to know. I appreciate that. All right, those are all the Law Self-Defense members. Again, all the Law Self-Defense members get to ask as many questions as they want, and I promise to answer them for no additional cost beyond the 30 cents or so a day they pay for membership. Instead of doing $5 super chats or Rumble rants per question. Think about it. Do the math, folks. You can become a Law Self-Defense member for less than $10 a month right now at lawofselfdefense.com/join. And of course, that helps support our content, even content like this that YouTube immediately demonetizes as soon as an actual gunshot is fired. Thanks, YouTube. Really appreciate it. Oh, by the way, we're getting close to 50,000 members. Just broke 48,000 members on YouTube. If you're not subscribed on YouTube, I would appreciate it if you could do that. You need to do that to comment anyway. And if you could hit that like, thumbs up button, that's always appreciated. That's free. The same thing on Rumble, of course. And if you could leave a comment on YouTube, even if it's just your city and state, just kind of filler stuff, YouTube uses that to kind of inform the algorithm to share our content more broadly. I presume Rumble does something similar. So that would be appreciated as well. Thank you very much, folks. Very, very kind of everybody. All right, see if there's any super chats that have come in yet. and then I'll check the Rumble rants. Max Beast, $10 super chat. Thank you very much, Max. Writes, cops had to take this guy from the breathing community. He knew all the legal loopholes and was dangerous. Well, he thought he knew legal loopholes. I don't know. I don't know where people go to get brainwashed like this. Folks, you think our founding fathers, you think George Washington and Thomas Jefferson secured American liberty by arguing on the street with 5 or 6 redcoats about what the law was, what their legal privileges were? That's not how it's done, folks. That is not how it's done. And by the way, if the cops ended up having done it wrong, there's recourse afterwards if you were seriously troubled by what happened. You don't win those fights on the side of the road. All right, let's see if there's any Rumble rants. Okay, doesn't look like it. So let's go ahead and start here with the police chief. Let's see. The police chief's name is Eric Johnson with 1 O and an E at the end. Johnson with an E. All right, let's go ahead and play. Where are you? There you are, sir. Okay. Hey, he's got are those the same reading glasses I have? Yeah, maybe. All right. All right, here we go, folks.
All the law enforcement throughout the state that has offered their assistance in helping us continue our daily operations. This has been a feat for a small department to keep up with our normal course of duties through all of this. And I want to thank you all for your responsible reporting of this and your patience in letting us get the facts as we have them today out to you. And I also want to make a point to thank all the people that have assembled to show their support of the Allan family. They've been a great example of exercising their First Amendment rights. They've done it peacefully.
That's 1.25,
appropriately, and that is really appreciated. The Davis County Critical Incident Protocol team is conducting this investigation. Our department has not interviewed involved officers in any official capacity. The only information we have is what you're going to see today on the video. All right.
So they had an outside agency conducting the investigation, appropriately enough.
I want to remind you that this video footage is only one piece of information in the incident.
Oh, and I should remind all of you, we do see the shooting here. So if that's going to trouble you, if that's going to keep you up at night, if that's going to induce you to complain to YouTube about me, please stop now. Please stop now. This is not the show for you.
And the only information available to us at the moment. The video we're about to watch is a compilation of 5 body-worn cameras by the officers involved and a dash camera from the initial officer. It's important to understand that from the moment of any use of force began until the end, only a couple of seconds elapsed. Therefore, to gain a better understanding as to what has happened
By the way, that's how quick this went sideways, right? We watched the earlier short video. It's only 3 minutes long, folks. And it starts with the cop approaching the car. So the moment that cop is approaching the car, Chase Allan created a circumstance in which he had 3 minutes left in the rest of his life. And then, of course, the actual use of force event is over in a couple seconds.
Very tedious process in breaking down this video. Following the review of this compilation video, I'm going to take your questions. I would ask you to hold your questions until that time. And at the conclusion of this press conference, I'm going to send out a link that will allow you to access a file to give you this compilation video along with the dash camera from the initial officer and the 5 body-worn cameras.
I tried to find that link and I couldn't find it, folks. It wasn't on the it wasn't in the comments for this particular video, which is on YouTube. Any of you can find it there. I'd love to have the original file for the compilation. All we see here is like a projection of that compilation video. If any of you come across it, feel free to send it my way.
Okay, let's get started. And spacebar on here, right? Okay, for the most part, I'm going to let this compilation video speak for itself. I'm going to orient you right now. This officer is eastbound on State Street, and by my best guess, it looks like, just knowing the city, it looks like he's around 300 West. is his current location. Let me point out one other thing. You're not going to hear sound immediately on this. And the reason for this is the minute a body camera or a dash camera is activated, it goes back 30 seconds in buffering. And during that 30 seconds buffering time, there is no audio. So as soon as you hear audio, then we will be out of that 30-second buffering period, and you will hear all the audio. That was 200 West State he just went through. And he's coming up on State and Main right here. I'm going to pause the video. We've superimposed the plate that is in front of him now that was only viewable until that car right here decided to turn south on Main Street, get in the right-hand turn lane. Up to that point,
it's a weird phrase, illegitimate license plate. I guess it's illegitimate if you're using it to operate a vehicle and the registration sticker is bad. Must be a term of
plate, based on what I can see on the video, was not viewable to him.
Although, you know, it's kind of fuzzed out. I wonder if it was just like completely fabricated plate with weird symbols on it. But in any case. So the cop's calling in the plate number now.
So you understand that the geographics of our city, it looks like to some of you, he's maybe turning off of State Street. It's a little bit of a weird area here. State Street is he's continuing on State Street here, even though he's making a left-hand turn of the street he's on. You'll see the post office. That is
21. We're pulling into the post office parking lot.
That is 145 East State Street.
By the way, folks, I don't do gun law, but it's my understanding, perhaps I'm incorrect, it's my understanding, of course, it's definitely the case that you're not allowed to bring a firearm into a post office. But it was my understanding that it's actually a federal crime to be in possession of a firearm on post office property, which would include the parking lot. Separate issue, of course, from what happened here.
And now we're transitioning to his body.
3 minutes to live from this point. 3 minutes for this 25-year-old to live.
You're going to see him approach and tell the driver of this vehicle the reason for the stop. The driver of the vehicle immediately asserts his right to not obey the laws of the land, at least the reason for this traffic stop. And at this point, you're going to hear Officer A call for backup. I want to point out that there's been an allegation made that backup was called for prior to this. That is absolutely untrue. And you will be able to see that here.
Good, how are you?
Good, I'm Officer Farmington Police. Reason for the stop today is there's no registration on your vehicle.
I don't need registration and I have questions.
All right. Davis, Fox 21. You have a couple more headed my way.
Okay, so as I said, he asked for backup officers to
Is
come.
this back window roll down?
Why do you need to know that?
I just want to make sure that you're the only one in the vehicle. So here's the deal, man. I'm stopping you because there's no registration on your vehicle, and I'm requesting your identification. Okay? You are detained at this time, and you are not free to leave. Are you going to provide me your identification?
I don't answer questions.
Okay, so I'm going to take that as a no, that you're not going to provide me your identification. Is that the route we're going? Or would you like to provide your identification to me? We can have a conversation. We can discuss the laws that you're breaking, and then we can go from there.
So I'm a big fan of body-worn cameras, largely for this purpose. I mean, partially, of course, because in theory, I guess it could capture police misconduct, but the cop wearing the body-worn camera knows it's recording. So even a badly intended cop is probably not going to engage in misconduct on his own camera. But it also provides good cops with an opportunity. They know also they're being recorded. They're recording themselves in effect to conduct themselves in a rigorously, legally sound way that's all captured on video. So very protective for the officers who are doing things the right way.
You want my identification when you're under duress and you accept surety and trusteeship over it.
Surety and
You know you're
trusteeship.
responsible for any debts that you're trying to incur here.
Okay, so I'm not trying to incur any debts or anything. I'm trying to investigate why your vehicle doesn't have any registration.
1692, you are trying to incur debt and legal action for something
Okay.
that is not allowed.
Okay,
And under
so
17, section
here's-
45,
here's-
traveling is a federally protected
okay.
activity. which-
I understand what you're saying. I understand what you're saying. And what I'm telling you
I understand what you're saying. It's all nonsense, but I understand you believe it.
is that you do not have an option to identify yourself.
I do.
You are lawfully required to identify yourself. So you can provide your identification to me, and we can have a conversation about the laws that you've broken, or you can fail to identify to me, and we can go that route too. I'm perfectly okay with either way you want to go, but the direction that this encounter goes is 100% in your hands.
Sir, Utah Code, United States Code,
Okay.
is a corporate policy,
Okay.
which you have to be contracted in to be required to follow it. Unless
Okay.
you provide me a contract with my wet ink signature on it saying that I'm required to follow it,
Okay?
then there's
So do you
no
want-
obligation.
Do you want to identify yourself to me, or do you want to go a different route?
All right, so you're about to see the individual produce what we believe is a U.S. passport, and it identifies him as Chase Allan.
Come on, Chief.
Wonderful. Do you have a driver license as well?
I'm not in any jurisdiction.
Okay.
Do not stop, do not detain. You are not allowed to stop me.
Let me see that.
Your list.
I didn't see what you just said to show me. Can you show that to me again? What's this?
This is the passport. It says, do not skip, do not detain. If you go on the first page,
Okay.
it says, the United States Bureau requests all related concerns.
Okay.
remittances,
Here's what I'm telling you.
United States hearing,
Here's what I'm telling you.
outlay or difference.
Okay. Will you hand that to me so I can read it? You want me to look at it through this tiny crack in your window? You're not going to hand it to me?
If I hand this to you, you accept trusteeship and surety, and you're obligated.
Sure. I'll accept trusteeship if you just hand me the document so I can identify who you are because you're required by state law.
I am not.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chase Allan.
That is not me. That is a piece of plastic paper.
So you have a fraudulent passport?
No.
Wonderful.
That's a piece of paper.
So that was the cop being a little bit of a dick there. He knows he's not claiming to have a fraudulent passport, but clearly he's getting a little bit frustrated.
That's what I'm hearing.
Yes, this is a
Okay,
sovereign.
you're able to see
citizen.
in the background there that assisting officers have arrived.
Okay, step out of the car for me.
No,
Sir, step out of the vehicle right now.
I am not required to.
All right, so things are going to go sideways here quick. By the way, folks, I will mention, I mean, you all know I routinely, essentially always, wherever it's legally permissible, carry a gun for personal protection. That includes in my car. When I'm on the very rare occasion, the older I get, the less often it happens. When I'm involved in a traffic stop where I'm operating a vehicle, unless the law requires me to do so, there are, of course, some jurisdictions where you're required to inform the officer upon contact that you're carrying a firearm. Unless the law requires me to offer that information up front, I generally don't tell the officer that I have a gun on my person. I carry concealed. The gun's not evident. But if I'm ever, can't remember this ever happening, but if I'm ever asked by the officer to exit the vehicle, I'm informing him I have a firearm on my person before I exit the vehicle. And I'm asking me exactly how he would like me to comply with his instructions. The last thing I want in the world is for that cop to suddenly be surprised if my holstered firearm would become suddenly visible to him.
What you're about to hear is Mr. Allen gives a cautionary statement, a warning statement that we're going to have an issue. I'll let you hear his exact words, but essentially that we're going to have an issue if we proceed. And then you also will want to pay close attention. You're going to see, if you haven't already noticed, he's filming this incident with a cell phone with his right hand, and he's going to transfer that cell phone with his right hand into his left hand.
Step out of this vehicle right now.
We're going to have issues with
Step out of the car.
So there's
You'll notice
Right now,
that
step out of the car and break the window.
the placement of the coat at that point of the video did not reveal
Right.
the holster.
Wow. Step out.
Now, at this stage, you can clearly see the holster exposed as he's moved his coat back. All right, now we're going to get into where the officers are going to make a decision to physically remove him out of the car.
all right. So this second line here is what gets you killed, folks. It's not having a gun on your person, in a holster, in your waistband. It's being in a confrontational demeanor, non-compliant demeanor with police, physically resisting, as he's going to do now as they open up the door, and then moving your hand to the weapon. Even if you're not intending in your mind to access the weapon, the police don't read minds any more than any of us read minds. The police are allowed to respond to the reasonable appearance of what you're doing, to make reasonable inferences from what you're doing. And if you're reaching towards a gun in your waistband, they can make the reasonable inference that you intend to retrieve that firearm. Don't do that, because that's an excellent way to get shot. And there's no need to do that.
After multiple attempts to get him to cooperate without any use of force. And again, you're going to see his.
By the way, folks, I mentioned earlier what I typically do in the rare event I'm involved in a traffic stop, and it happens from time to time. I've never had my gun come up as a topic of conversation. Oh, I shouldn't say that. No, I've never had the gun come up as a topic of conversation. I've never had an officer be aware that I was carrying a gun on my person because they didn't need to. I did have, when I lived in Massachusetts, you get pulled over and when they run your license, the fact that you have a concealed carry permit pops up inside the patrol car. I'm not sure how many jurisdictions do that. And the cop was actually kind enough to, when he came back to, and he just gave me a warning, which was nice of him too. But he said, listen, I see your concealed carry permit's going to expire in a few months. You might want to get on that to make sure, it stays valid. It didn't matter to me at the time because I was finally fleeing the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. But it was kind of him to let me know. But he was aware I had a concealed carry permit. He didn't ask if I was carrying a gun at the moment, and I didn't tell him.
His right hand on his right hip area.
That was a lot of shots there.
If you don't step out of the car, we're gonna break the window and pull you out.
All right, so now we have a different body camera. Here's the arm, folks. That arm looks like nothing more than reaching for an appendix pistol in the waistband. That's exactly what a presentation of a pistol from an appendix in the waistband holster looks like. You have the weak hand going to clear the garment. You have the strong hand retrieving the gun. What could he have done instead? Well, he could have complied from the beginning. He could have left his hands on the steering wheel. Was he shot with his hands on the steering wheel? No.
Step out of the car.
Did you catch that? That's a reload right there, folks. He emptied that gun. Oh, he's got a closed emitter red dot on it. Everybody's got red dots. Oh, cool. For Farmington Police Department. Good for you, guys. I'm a big fan. They looks like they all have the same enclosed red dot on their Glocks. That might just be it's probably a Glock 17, which coincidentally holds 17 rounds plus one in the chamber. Might be a Glock 19. I don't know exactly what gun they carry, but he emptied it. He's doing a reload right there. Or in fairness, maybe he didn't empty it. Maybe he had a malfunction. That's a pretty good way to To clear, if you have a malfunction, just dump the mag, work the slide, put another mag in. Yeah, it looks more like a Glock 19 to me. Could be a 22. I don't know.
All right, this is going to finish up.
So officers remove Mr. Allen from the vehicle, empty holster on his hip, gun is visible on the floorboard. That's consistent with someone who was in fact presenting a gun from an in the waistband holster, cleared the holster, and was shot and neutralized before they could actually bring the gun into play.
You're going to see a few things here that are highlighted from still shots. And again, when
I see someone mention the cop complained later that his gun jammed. Yeah, that seems more likely than that he, in that short time, he dumps. He's got a pretty pretty quick trigger finger. He's got pretty tight splits. If he dumped that gun in that brief period of time, malfunction seems more likely. Glocks are extremely reliable handguns, but they can malfunction, sure, and often induced by the user.
you watch this footage raw, you're going to see how so much of this is not visible with the body camera. It has to be broke down into frame by frame in order to see some of the things we've already shown you and some things that you're about to see.
Again, folks, if you're watching on YouTube and you want your questions answered, they need to be $5 super chats. So they're dragging him out of the car, and already his holster is empty. They didn't empty it later, folks. The holster's empty right here. And there's the gun, right where you would expect it to be if he just got it clear of the holster and then was neutralized by the officer's gunfire. By the way, clean your car, dude.
Okay, at this point, we're gonna run the compilation video, and it's gonna start with Officer A and run all the way through each officer who are identified by the subsequent letters, and we'll just let that run.
So he's going to show more videos here, folks. But remember what the legal question is. Is it necessary that Chase Allan was actually intending to present his pistol and shoot the officers with it, threaten the officers with it? No. All that's necessary for this use of deadly defensive force by these police officers to be lawful is that they had a reasonable perception that Chase Allan was presenting as an unlawful, imminent threat of deadly force harm. They don't have to be right, although the evidence is highly consistent with that perception being correct. They just have to be reasonable, and the evidence is certainly enough for the perception to be reasonable.
Sir, step out of the vehicle right now.
I am not required to.
Step out of this vehicle right now.
And we're going to have issues.
Step out of the car right now. Step out of the car. We're going to break the window and pull you out. Step out of the car. Hey, step out of the car. Sir, step out of the vehicle right now.
I am not required to.
Step out of this vehicle right now.
And we're going to have issues.
Sir, step out of the car right now. Step out of the car. We're going to break the window and pull you out. Step out of the car.
I mean, I'm sorry. I don't wish Chase Allan dead. 25 years old. He had the rest. He presumably would have had a long life ahead of him. But look at what he did to himself. And he's got what, 4 or 5 cops arrayed around that vehicle. All of them with very good presentations, very quick engagement. They look like they know how to run a gun. Firing at him. That's a buzzsaw.
Sir, step out of the vehicle right now. Step out of this vehicle right now. Step out of the car. If you don't step out of the car, we're going to break the window and pull you out. Step out of the car. Go, 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 go.
Right there was the malfunction. Yeah, right there was the malfunction. Let's see if I can. So here we go. This cop is his body camera. Of course, we can't see the cop, but they shout gun. His gun comes up. See if I can catch it. He's firing. He's hitting the edge of the A-frame, their support member, looks like. And it looks like he has a malfunction right there. His hand comes up to the top of the slide. You see it? Something's not right. He brings the gun back down. Something's still not right. And he it looks like he tries to clear it again, and then he starts putting a new mag in.
Step out of this vehicle right now. Step out of the car. If you don't step out of the car, we're going to break the window and pull you out. Step out of the car. Go, 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 go.
Man, that is a solid reload. That is a solid reload. I'm going to watch that again just because I like it.
Step out of the car. Go, 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 go.
Very efficient. Very well done. Out. In. That is cycle the slide. Good work, man.
That one here. Okay, step out of the car for me.
Although you notice he had to pull the mag out of the Glock. That's a thing with Glock. Sometimes these polymer mags, they don't drop free from the gun like you would like them to. Would have helped if he'd had the gun more vertical. But even with that very, very quick reload.
Step out of this vehicle right now. Step out of the car right now. Don't step out of the car. We're going to break the window and pull you out. Step out of the car. Go, 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 Fire! Have a fraudulent passport? Wonderful. That's what I'm hearing. Okay, step out of the car for me. Sir, step out of the vehicle right now. Step out of this vehicle right now. Sir, step out of the car right now. If you don't step out of the car, we're going to break the window and pull you out. Step out of the car. Go, 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 go.
I wonder how many rounds hit him. That was a lot of rounds. By the way, I know this often comes up in these situations. People say, well, the cops, they fired whatever, 20, 30, 40 rounds. To suggest that the number of rounds was just outrageous under the circumstances. It's important to keep in mind, folks, every cop is operating independently. They're not counting the rounds being fired by other officers as they're firing their own gun. They're not required to do that. They're independently responding to the apparent threat. And if you're surrounded by 5 cops and they each perceive an imminent threat of deadly force and they engage you with their pistol and they each fire 6 rounds, well, that's 30 rounds. It adds up. So don't do that.
Okay, as I said, that will be made available to all of you along with the raw footage, and I'll take your questions now. Keeping in mind, obviously it's an ongoing investigation. There's going to be some things that I'm not going to be able to comment on simply because I don't know. I know what you know, essentially. So with that, let's begin. Yes, sir.
Chief, with the Allan family history police department, when Chase produced the passport.
I say with the first question was, Chief, with the Allan family history with the police department. So I don't really know anything about that. The news report didn't say anything about it. I did see someone mention something in the chat, but I have no personal knowledge of this. But apparently there is a history of interaction between this guy's family and the police. That's generally not a good thing, folks.
To that officer. Do you know if the officer knew the family history or had any idea? There was a short amount of time. Did he know? Was that known?
Again, I don't know what the officer would say to that question because I've not spoken to him and asked him that question. But I'm willing to tell you this, that it's not my belief they do. All right. 4 of those officers on scene have been with the department for 7 to 8 months max. One of those officers on scene has been with us for 12 years and has not had any involvement with that family.
Folks, 4 of the 5 officers have been on the force for about 7 or 8 months. Guess why that's the case? Because defund the police and all those initiatives and the way police officers are prosecuted these days have driven the experienced guys out of departments. They don't want to take the risk, the legal risk. They've always been willing to take the physical risk. They don't want to take the legal risk of becoming the next Derek Chauvin. So they say, you know what, I'll move to another department where I'm less likely to get into a fight, or I'll stay with the department, but I'm getting off the streets. I'm going to take an academy position. I'll take a public affairs position. I'll take a headquarters position. I'll do anything that is unlikely to involve me going hands-on with the suspect. Well, that empties a slot on the street that has to be filled. And so what do? They go out and recruit new cops, put them through the academy, put them on the street. And then you end up with a lot of cops on the street who have the experience of 6, 7, 8 months on the job when they have to go hands-on. Derek Chauvin was very experienced, 20 years on the job, but the other 3 officers who were also prosecuted and convicted in that George Floyd case, they'd been on the job for months or weeks. One of them, it was his second call, I believe. Now, I don't think these officers here did anything wrong, but as a general matter, you're not going to get better decision-making, use of force decision-making out of a cop who's been on the job 6 months than a cop who's been on the job 15 years. Thanks, defund the police. You're creating this. And of course, for the defund the police people, this is a feature, not a glitch. Now, this case, of course, happened to involve a Chase Allan, a white guy. But for the defund the police, if they create more risk, more danger of use of force by police, that's good for them. That just fits their narrative. More lawsuits for Benjamin Crump, more multi-million-dollar payouts from politicians who are more than happy to spend other people's money to make their political problems go away. Benjamin Crump makes money off police shooting suspects, particularly black suspects. He doesn't make money if that doesn't happen. You think he wants more of that or less of that? To make 10, 20, 30 million dollars a year without ever having to argue in court, purely out of settlements agreed to by politicians.
I apologize.
That's all good.
Can you talk about what do you see when you watch the videos? Do you see things going textbook? Do you see things that could be done differently? What do you see?
I see police officers that are made a lawful and reasonable traffic stop and dealt with someone that was combative. Let me change that word from combative to non-compliant. All right, how's that? I see them deal with him professionally, even killed, cool, calm, and collected temperament. And unfortunately, then I see things go a really tragic direction.
But you can't tell the opinion if the gun obviously, did you see the gun in the holster in the video when you slowed it down? And then after the shooting, it's on the floor. Did you see them point him and pull it out, or did you see him point it at the officers?
I'm literally watching what you're watching. I have not been privy to any further breakdown. I anticipate that that the protocol team, through their investigation, may be able to provide better detail to that. But
based on what you saw, it happened so fast to me, you've probably seen it a few times. Did you see, based on what you saw, that he pulled it or gestured to it or anything?
Based on what I see, which is what we're all watching.
By the way, folks, those closed emitter red dots in general are fairly expensive. The closed emitter red dots are the newest thing. I mean, I haven't looked recently, but it wouldn't surprise me if they were in the $400 range, $300, $400 range. Those Glock pistols, I mean, if you or I, if non-law enforcement goes to buy them, they're $500. Police departments get a very, very substantial discount. It's quite possible those closed emitter dots, red dots on the slides, cost as much as the gun, but they're fantastic to shoot with. But they're quite expensive. So basically, it's doubling the cost of the pistol. So I would expect this is a pretty well-funded police department to be able to afford that for every cop there to have that closed emitter red dot on the gun.
I see a manipulation of that holster, movement of that holster, but I can't clearly see a firearm from the angle that the camera is. And I think it's important. Force Science does some really great education and training. Force Science Institute on the difference of what
I've been there.
eyeballs will see on any given
course
scene versus what the camera can see.
And
I think that's what is occurring here.
Chief,
yes.
When it comes to training on this, I mean, obviously, yeah, there's a holster and there's a gun. Our officers train to fire when they see the gun or when the person in this case reaches for it.
Officers are trained to respond using deadly force when there's an imminent threat of serious bodily injury or death to them or anyone other than the suspect. And what I see on that video is officers not responding to someone that just has a gun in a holster.
This might be speculative, but do you see that going any other way by the behavior of the officers?
I apologize. Can you say that one more time?
This might be speculative, but do you see that situation going any other way based on the way the officers approached it?
Yeah, I don't want to speculate on that.
That reporter phrased the question wrongly. How about, could you see it going any other way if Chase Allan had complied with lawful instructions?
Well, I think the initial officer made a really interesting comment to the driver of that vehicle. This is going to go the way you decide it's going to go.
Now that we were trying to investigate, is there any indication that the man who's pulled over had ties to the San Francisco event or anything like that?
I have not spent any time corroborating that. I've seen the reports.
Australian,
That's nothing
yes,
I've spent
nice.
any time.
Australian accent.
Yes.
Chief,
Here
at
and
some
there.
point with the dispatch order we heard, there wasn't somebody said, shut off all the body cameras. And that has led to a lot of speculation that police say maybe we messed up or something like that, shut off the body cameras. What is your response to when we've heard that go through dispatch?
To be clear, the police have not said maybe we messed up. I've answered this question. I'm happy to answer it again. Having worked on these protocol teams throughout my career, the order to shut off body cameras was simply done out of efficiency for the investigation. The dynamicness, the fluidity of the incident was well over with before that radio broadcast that you're referring to was put out. And it's simply so that an investigator that could otherwise be doing other important things for the investigation doesn't have to sit and watch every second of a video camera that provides nothing.
The incident was over.
It was over, correct.
Can you, I don't know, can you make any judgment as to whether they were justified or not justified at this?
That's not my place to do that.
Can you tell me a little bit about, if you've seen this a lot, how many shots were fired? Have you been able to?
Sorry,
Justified,
It was over,
I
correct.
missed that.
can you, I don't know, can you make any judgment as to whether they were justified or not justified at this?
That's not my place to do that.
Well, you could provide an opinion, of course, not a legal finding. I mean, ultimately, the ultimate legal finding wouldn't even be made by the outside team during the investigation. You don't truly have a final adjudication of justification unless the cops are prosecuted, it goes to trial, and the jury acquits them, which I don't expect. I don't expect these cops to be prosecuted here.
Can you tell me a little bit about, if you've seen this a lot, how many shots were fired? Have you been able to determine? And was it the 5 officers then that fired the rifles?
There were 5 officers that fired, and the amount of shots will be included in the critical incidents report. That takes time to get those ballistic reports back, so I can't comment on it today because I don't know.
Chief, yeah, I want to go back to the beginning too. The illegitimate plate, just confirming what was on that plate, what made it illegitimate versus a normal license.
It's yeah, I refer to it as more of a placard. There's nothing about it that says it's a license plate as we all know it, right? There's a flag symbol, and then to be quite honest, I don't even know what the text
So the
says
plate was
on there. I haven't.
the plate was
haven't
complete,
reviewed that thoroughly,
complete fabrication.
but it's not a plate from the state of Utah or any other of the 49 states.
Does it look homemade?
I do not know that.
That'll get you pulled over every time, folks.
Farmington Police Department has not had contact with the family. That is an assignment that's been given through the protocol team to the Bountiful Police Department. I know that they were made multiple attempts to reach out to the family. The last I heard is that the family had not responded back. That offer was given to them, or at least attempted to be given to them before you all viewed it. I don't know where that stands.
A few people have been saying that the window between first contact and opening fire was quite small. What's your comment today? It was only about 3 to 4 minutes. Is that normal?
We talk about routine traffic stops.
So that was the Australian again, I guess. He's asking, it was only like 3 minutes from the time of the stop to the time of the shooting. Is that unusual? I guess he's suggesting it was too fast or something. Folks, the time between stop and shooting is determined by the suspect. It's not determined by the officer. The shooting might have been required 5 seconds in, or 30 seconds in, or 1 minute in, or 2 minutes in, or 3 minutes in. It's all determined by the conduct of the driver. At the moment, the driver presents as a reasonably perceived imminent unlawful threat of death or serious bodily injury to officers or others. The cops are privileged to use deadly force upon him.
The word normal, I don't know that I can apply the word normal to that.
Maybe you said this, maybe you can't say, did he fire, or can you say he did fire?
Again, the ballistics report would be what would give us that information, and that would be some time before we're privy to that.
Chief.
Yes.
The critical incident team is still working on this investigation. Why go ahead and release this video?
Because it's factual. It's information that we have that we can get out. I think transparency. I know the public. Many people want to know where this is at, and in the effort of transparency, we're anxious to put out what we know and what we can say. And so, the reason statements aren't made during an open active investigation is is someone might misspeak, and that creates conflict from one statement to the other. The video speaks for itself. The video is not going to change.
And investigators looking to try and get the video that looks like Chase was recording from his phone as like for another angle or anything like that.
Yes, it appears to me that he's now, I don't know if he actually is videoing, but it certainly appears to me that he is.
Yeah, I was just wondering if investigators were trying to get that video.
I have no doubt. Yeah, I have no doubt.
You've not seen it though?
No, I am not privy to the critical incident team's investigation whatsoever.
Do we know if that gun belonged to Chase, or is there a different gun owner? Or is there a way?
Once again, I have no doubt that will all be part of the critical incidents team's investigation. Yeah.
Chief, how are those officers doing? I mean, there are split-second decisions that are made that have dire consequences. How's your department? How are the officers doing?
They're impacted. All of us are. I think officers across the country are impacted. I've watched several videos of officer-involved shootings through my years, and whether it's in your hometown or whether it's across the country, it impacts you. And my guys are definitely impacted. I've talked to all my officers daily, and certainly these officers, I checked on their well-being. They're okay. They're okay. They're doing all right.
Another question, Chief, too. I mean, yeah, these are 5 officers. As you said last week, this is 20% of your force. How are you guys moving forward?
Wow, small department.
5 officers. How do you,
We're doing the best we can. And as I told you in my introduction, we're relying on the great law enforcement agencies that we're surrounded by. Yeah, we're getting by.
So he's talking about something about the police being there to incur debt or something. What was all that about? And that they're not allowed to stop him? What does he mean?
I have no idea, sir.
What sort of services are the 5 officers involved being offered from the department?
Say that again for me.
What sort of services are the 5 officers involved being offered by the department? Therapy, that sort of stuff.
So our department has a mental health group that is available to them as they need it. It's completely confidential. It's paid for by the city. However, I'm not privy to their usage of it. So I'm confident that they are aware of it. Absolutely.
So the family, they issued that release. I'm sure you've seen it. It's been repeated over and over. They call this a brutal murder. I guess, what do you say to that?
I say it's just a tragic ending to what started out as an everyday traffic stop.
By the way, Farmington, the town of Farmington, you did a good job hiring this police chief based on this presentation.
The proverbial routine traffic stop ended in tragedy.
And take away the gun from that, would he have at most just gotten a ticket, or would you have arrested him for having a license and registration?
We would only know that if the investigation would have been allowed to play out, right? Trying to extract him from the vehicle was part of that process to further figure out what was going to happen from a criminal element of this circumstance. Now we won't know.
You identified the 5 yet, or will you?
We will, not right now. Yeah, I feel like they deserve privacy right now.
So at the end of the video, when it all goes down, there's like a chainsaw or something sounding in the background, or something loud.
I'll speak to that just from watching what you're watching. I'm pretty certain that's the vehicle. You'll hear actually when you rewatch this, which I'm sure you will. You'll hear that vehicle actually revs high RPMs just prior to the eruption of gunfire.
Yeah, which would be consistent with him moving his hip, right? Extending his right leg, hitting the gas pedal with his foot, intentionally or not, and raising his right hip to clear the holster to get a grip on the pistol.
His foot on the gas?
That's all I can assume, yeah.
Just got the same question from our newsroom. Could he have been reaching for his seatbelt buckle? Is that something that's going through yet in the investigation?
Again, I'm not doing the investigation as I watch this. Could have been. It's in the same location, right?
Does it matter? Do the cops have to leave that discretion to the person whose hand is reaching for a gun? Nope. If a gun were on a table next to a glass of water and there's a confrontation and the person reaches for the table, do you have to presume they're reaching for the glass of water as opposed to the gun? No.
Yeah, thank you.
Everything seemed to be quite calm and moving in a calm manner until the extraction. That seemed to be a step up in the force used. What did you see? What do you see when you look at that? What do you see? It seemed to me like a big jump. It's like it escalated quite quickly to get him out of the vehicle.
I would actually say just the contrary. The force continuum goes from verbal to hands-on. I think had our officers chosen to, we're all looking at this from a Monday morning quarterback standpoint. They had no idea what was about to happen. They couldn't have known what was about to happen. And so had they have chosen to use a pepper ball, to use a taser, to use some other impact weapon, something actually higher level of force than hands-on, I think we would be questioning that, to be quite honest. So that escalation of force from verbal.
No one's going to use a non-deadly weapon at that point, folks. You're not using pepper spray. Not when you have 5 cops and plenty of hands. You're not going to contaminate everybody with pepper spray. You're not going to whip out a taser. You have overwhelming physical force, assuming that the driver doesn't go for a gun.
To hands-on, in my opinion, was absolutely reasonable and appropriate.
Can you talk about, based on training, do all 5 officers have to see the gun to prompt them to shoot?
That's not necessarily what I would deem as training.
When they choose to use deadly force, what's the standard? What do they have? I mean, I know they have to feel like their life is in danger, but do they have to see something certain?
They have to feel an imminent threat that could cause serious bodily injury or death to themselves or someone else. That's the state statute.
Pretty good. He left out reasonably perceive that threat. But otherwise, this guy's got it pretty well drilled. And by the way, not every officer has to see the gun. The officers are allowed to reasonably rely on the perceptions of their fellow officers. So if only one officer sees the gun, the others, that's why they shout gun, to inform the other officers of what they've perceived.
So if someone starts firing just because their partner's firing, is that a reason or not?
I'm going to let the investigation speak to that.
And you how when that will be done, or how long did those typically take?
Again, there just is no typical in our profession, right? I can't speak to the timeline of that. I know there's many detectives, investigators working hard as we speak. So I have full confidence in them.
All right, wrapping
Anything
up.
else? Thank you all for coming. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
All right. And that's the end of the long form video there. I guess we're going to have ultimately a more formal report because this department's not investigating itself. There's outside organizations doing that, and they're going to present, I guess, a more formal report. When that comes out, if it looks sufficiently interesting, perhaps we'll do it again. I'm sure you guys can hear that horn, right? Oh my God, there's one conductor in particular. So we have these, the trains that go by my office are mostly coal trains. They're coal, I guess it's from Wyoming, and it goes down to, head south through my town to a coal burning power plant in Pueblo, Colorado. And there's like 10 or 12 of them a day, these 100-car long trains of coal heading south and the empty cars heading back north to get more coal. And, man, there's one conductor in particular that just loves that horn. He loves it. All right. So that's where we are with the Chase Allan shooting. Looks like a perfectly lawful shoot to me. All the evidence is consistent with the officers having a reasonable perception that Chase Allan presented himself as an imminent, unlawful threat of deadly force against the officers. Doesn't mean he necessarily wasn't going for his seatbelt. Who knows? But that's not the legal question. The legal question is, does the evidence support a reasonable perception that Chase Allan was presenting as an imminent, unlawful threat of death or serious bodily injury? And once that question is raised, that stands unless that proposition can be disproven beyond any reasonable doubt. Because effectively it's a self-defense claim by the officers. Would it be reasonable to believe that a prosecution based on these facts could disprove beyond any reasonable doubt that these officers had a reasonable perception of an imminent, unlawful threat of death or serious bodily injury at the hands of Chase Allan when his hands go for that gun in his waistband, go to that gun in his waistband? That's never going to happen. Now, were this, heaven forbid, another racially energized prosecution? Were Chase Allan black? Might we see a prosecution despite the lack of legal merit? Of course. Might we see Benjamin Crump taking his private jet out to Farmington, Utah? Yeah, sure. Might Benjamin Crump secure a $30 million settlement from the city as go-away money? Because politicians are always happy to spend other people's money, taxpayer money, to make their own problems go away, their own political problems go away. Yes, of course, it happens all the time. Does any of that change the legal merits of this shooting? No. Nope. Those are all the human dynamics that go around these shootings, folks. There's a lot of money to be made in these shootings. Guarantee you the family is going to be filing a wrongful death suit if they haven't already against the department. They have less leverage in this case because who knew Chase Allan is a white guy? So Benjamin Crump's not going to fly in to politically agitate for them. I don't expect. When he does show up, he's very good at what he does. Benjamin Crump is properly thought of not as an attorney. I mean, technically, of course, he is an attorney, but he's properly thought of. What he actually does for his day job is not practice law. It's to be a propagandist. That secures him many tens of millions of dollars in settlements every year. And he's very good at it. He's good at it. All right, let me take a look at the member dashboard, see if they were questions that have come in. Let's see. It looks like there may have been. Again, law self-defense members get to ask as many questions as they want. I answer them all for no additional cost beyond their membership cost, which is less than $10 a month, 30 cents a day. So if you'd like to ask questions and get them answered, that's the cost-effective way to do that. Otherwise, if you're on YouTube, it has to be a $5 super chat. On Rumble, it needs to be a $5 Rumble rant. Or for 30 cents a day, get all, that's per question, $5. Or for 30 cents a day, get all your questions answered. And you become a Law Self-Defense member right now at lawofselfdefense.com/join. And come join us on the member dashboard where we're streaming this video live and ask as many questions as you like. Robert asks, no rioting yet? Yes, I don't expect we'll have rioting here. Let's see. Roberts, Law Self-Defense member Robert asks, question, Utah is a permitless carry. I agree, but would inform officers from the get-go that I am armed. Yeah, officers can't shoot you just because you have a gun on you, but that's not what happened here. If Chase Allan had kept his hands on the steering wheel, he would not have been shot. When you reach for the gun while in a physical confrontation with police, you're going to get shot. Law Self-Defense member Matt asked, question, New Jersey recently passed a concealed carry law requiring a lawful carrying person to immediately notify a police officer that they are carrying and provide their license. If you are a passenger of a vehicle that's pulled over, would you have an obligation to notify? Again, I don't do gun law. I'd have to look at that statute. My expectation is that New Jersey's position would be any interaction with police, even incidental, like being a passenger in a car, would trigger the requirement to report. Remember, New Jersey puts this requirement to disclose. The states that require these things, folks, it's purely intended as a chilling effect on people getting concealed carry permits. They want to make it as inconvenient as possible. They'll require you to instantly report, which is only going to complicate the stop. If you're a law-abiding citizen, they require you to get insurance or ridiculous levels of training. This is all intended simply to chill your exercise of your Second Amendment rights. So because that's their intent, that's how I would expect them to implement it. Let's see. Law Self-Defense member Miles Dog question. Hello from Fair Oaks, California. Where do you carry extra mag, OC, flashlight, machete, machete? So the heavy stuff I carry on my belt. So the belt supports the weight of that. So the pistol, spare mags, that kind of stuff is on the belt. My OC spray canister, I like to carry it on my keychain for my car. It's always in the same pocket. If I'm approaching my vehicle, it's always, well, these days, of course, everything is, you don't need to get a key out anymore. But it's right there in my pocket. I know where to find it. It's easy to grab from my pocket. I carry a small flashlight. What is it? I really like this little flashlight. It's a It's a Streamlight Macro Stream USB. So it looks like this. It's quite bright. It's rechargeable. If you pull the bezel out, there's a little USB plug there, so you can recharge it with USB. And it's very convenient to fit in the pocket. Comes with a little clip. I'm a big fan. I buy these for family all the time, and it's a great little light. And that just goes in my front pocket as well with the clip. Pocket knife again, folding knife with a clip in the pocket, right pocket. It's but any heavy stuff would be on the belt. Other stuff just goes in the pockets. Let's see. Law self-defense member Donnie. Question: first red flag is dark tinted windows. Second red flag, refusal to lower the window so the cop can accurately see what's going on. Yeah, you're just raising alarms for the officer. And if you're not a bad actor, why are you doing that? I mean, if you're not a bad actor or just want to be a dick, why? Why are you intentionally raising the alarm level of the officer? What difference does it make? Law self-defense member Dave. Question, Andrew, although I'm a new CCW carry, I have to believe that by not immediately notifying an LEO, you could risk them seeing it first because your clothing happens to be inadvertently revealing the gun, either when in the car or when you're getting out. So I've carried a gun concealed for 30 years, and I've never accidentally disclosed the gun. I just that doesn't happen to me because largely experience, and I carry all the time. I wear the same kinds of clothes most of the time, but when you're new to CCW, yeah, it wouldn't surprise me at all if you're not quite accustomed to the combination of the gun, the carry method, the clothing, and the last thing in the world you want to do is surprise that officer with the presence of a gun, for sure. Let's see. Yeah, I've got about another year and a quarter on this office lease, folks, and then we're gone, and hopefully no more train horns after that. Law self-defense member Chuck. Question, quote, I always go by Moss no matter what, by mass, no matter what state I'm in. Or do you mean Moss, like Moss Ayub? Oh, he means Moss Ayub. He's got a later comment here. Moss Ayub, by the way, Moss Ayub, a very well-known, of course, self-defense instructor, retired police officer. He wrote the foreword to my book. Very kind of him. Moss Ayub is one of the formative figures in my developing a legal career focused entirely on use of force law. Were it not for Moss, I wouldn't be here doing what I do. I think the world of Moss. I'm going to see him in a couple of weeks at the 2023 Tactical Conference in Dallas again this year, where I'm teaching. At least I assume he's going to be there. Yeah, I think I saw him on the teaching schedule. He's there pretty much every year. I can't imagine anything would keep him away but health. So presumably I'll see Moss again in a couple of weeks. He has a lot of videos on YouTube. He does a lot of videos these days sponsored by Wilson Combat, the makers of high-end 1911 pistols and ARs and shotguns and stuff, customizers of many of those guns. Great stuff, by the way. The 1911 I carried for 20 years was a Wilson Combat 1911. It was also my competition gun. I've got maybe 100,000 rounds through that gun over a 15, 20-year period. Fantastic weapon, but expensive, pricey. So Moss, one of the videos Moss has on YouTube is if you're pulled over by the police while carrying a gun, what do you do? Now, I have to confess, I haven't seen the video, so I don't know what Moss recommends, but I very rarely disagree with what Moss has to say. So I would certainly recommend taking a look at that video. Let's see. Law self-defense member Ian. Question, what is it about sovereign citizens that is so generally abrasive? Do they really think they just found the ultimate get-out-of-jail-free card? Is it the total disregard for reality? I think it's just a total disregard for reality. They don't like the way things are. And frankly, there's good reason not to be completely happy with the way things are, right? I'm not completely happy with the way things are. But they take it to a level where they just pretend there's an entirely different legal framework that exists. And it only exists in their head. It doesn't exist in the real world. And that leads to these kinds of confrontations. Law self-defense member Dave, comment, good luck trying to get an attorney to answer your questions for 30 cents a day. And true enough, especially, by the way, an attorney who knows what they're talking about. Most attorneys are not well trained in self-defense law, use of force law. I myself had maybe maybe 5 minutes on self-defense as a legal justification in the first year of law school, criminal law course. And that was it. They don't emphasize it much at all. I basically had to go back to the law library after I became an attorney and educate myself with primary sources, the actual law, the statutes, the court decisions, the jury instructions. And of course, I did that for all 50 states, for Puerto Rico, for Guam, for Washington, D.C., all the territories. And it was a lot of work. It was years of work to do that. And most lawyers don't do that because it's not that important to them. Most lawyers don't do a lot of, first of all, if you're not a criminal defense lawyer, you don't need to know anything professionally about self-defense law, right? It's not part of your practice. If you are a criminal defense law attorney, you might do quite a few self-defense cases, but most of them are crappy, bad guy cases of self-defense. I talk to a lot of criminal defense attorneys, a lot of them very experienced, 20, 30 years practicing law, and they'll tell me in their entire career, when I ask them, how many good guy cases of self-defense have you had to argue in court? They'll be like 3, 4. So you can't support a legal practice, a traditional legal practice, even a criminal defense practice on good guy cases of self-defense. There's just not enough of them in any particular area. The only way to make it work is to do what I do, which is to not be lead counsel on those cases, but to be a consultant to other lead counsel. And that way I'm able to consult on cases all across the country. I'm not limited to whatever use of force event might have happened within a few miles of my office. Law self-defense member Miles asks, question also, what's your dominant hand? I'm a righty. I'm right hand. But I can shoot pretty well with my left hand, just not as quick. One of the benefits of a long career competitive shooting, where you can't win anything if you can't shoot weekend. Law self-defense member Kyle, comment, in Texas, it's worded that if asked for identification by a law enforcement officer, you are to present the LTC, license to carry, with the ID if you're carrying. They removed the penalty for failure to do so a few years ago. Yeah, I mean, listen, you just use common sense. You don't want to surprise the cop with the gun. So if you're going to be asked to remove, get out of the car, or if the cop's about to frisk you, asks you to assume a position where he might frisk you, let the cop know you got a gun before he finds it himself, for sure. And I generally don't, someone else, Chuck mentions this, don't use the word gun. I generally would say firearm. Gun, the Germanic gun, is just much more emotive. Firearm is cooler, more technical, less alarming. Let's see. Okay, so that's all the law self-defense members. Let me refresh the super chat here. Again, it has to be $5 minimum super chat or a Rumble rant, folks, if you're not a law self-defense member. Let's see. All right, Kingslayer Damocles, back again. Good to see you. $5 super chat writes, you can't win a fight against a group of people who are legally allowed to batter, molest, and kidnap you. Verbally non-consent. Don't physically resist. Verbally non-consent. I mean, I'm not sure what that means, actually. I mean, of course, you don't need to be subservient to the police. If you don't want to answer their questions, don't answer their questions. You could stay mute. You could say, I don't want to answer any questions. If they want to search your car, you don't have to submit to that. You can say, I don't want you to search my car. You don't have my permission. Get a warrant. But what if they go to just search your car anyway? Well, then you fight that later. You don't get into a physical altercation with them because they're unlawfully searching your car, because you could likely end up dead. Sagebrush Farmer, $10 super chat, very generous. Thank you very much. Writes, it was a piece of paper, not a license plate. His mom taught him everything. There is a history with the family and law enforcement. Yeah, I mean, other than what? I guess speeding or reckless driving or going through a light. I mean, having a completely fabricated piece of paper in place of a license plate seems to me a pretty good way to get pulled over. Mexican Iron Man, $10 super chat. Thank you very much. Says, this guy is clearly failing what my friend and trainer, John Farnham, calls the attitude test. John Farnham is really a peer of Masayub, but more shooting oriented, teaches shooting, defensive shooting. He's right here in Colorado, where I live, although he lives further up north in the state than I do. Great guy. Him and his wife, Vicky, teach together. Has been around a long, long time, extremely knowledgeable. If you have the opportunity to take training from either Mas Ayub or John Farnham, and I hate to say it, but I think the world of both of them, but none of us get out of this room alive, right? There are instructors I wish I had taken courses from that I don't have the opportunity to do anymore because they're not with us anymore. So if you have the opportunity to take instruction training from either Mas Ayub or John Farnham, I would urge you to do it. Those are great guys and really good at what they do. Kingslayer Damocles, $5 super chat says, provides nothing. Quote, everything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. Close quote. The order wasn't given to help investigators, quite the opposite. The order wasn't given to help investigators. Oh, I think you might be referring to the turn off the body camera stuff. Well, the body cameras don't normally operate all the time anyway. So that they're triggered by this event. Once they've captured the relevant material around the event, there's no investigatory purpose to keep them running. If they ran another 30 hours, you wouldn't, then everyone's got to look at that extra 30 hours of video. So I think that's reasonable. Of course, what's really happening is, especially a cop who's been on the force for 7 months, and in the aftermath of the stress of that kind of event, a cop might mutter something to his buddy that could be made to look bad later. And the cops naturally don't want to capture that on video. That muttered statement later is, the fight's over. So judge the fight based on the fight. Certainly, if it were me, I'd want, after the fight's over and there's no longer an investigatory purpose to running the cameras, I would want the cameras off if it were me. All right, so now to the Rumble rants, if there are any. Rumble doesn't give me a very good way to, I just have to scroll through and see if there's one color-coded. And it looks like there is not. So we are, good heavens. I thought this would be quick. We're still almost a 2-hour show. All right. Well, folks, I appreciate you staying with me this long on a Saturday morning. I hope you found it useful and entertaining. Last reminder, our Saturday, April 15th, Law of Self-Defense Advanced course, the only one scheduled for this year, for all of 2023, in a single day. Learn how to be hard to convict an unattractive target of prosecution if you're ever compelled to defend yourself, your family, your property. And you can learn it all in one day, taught live by me, streamed to your computer, Saturday, April 15th. If you can't make it, if you have a scheduling conflict, I would suggest you register for the class anyway, because every student will also get access to the playback of the class. So that's not live, of course, but you still get access to all the content and all the questions I answered during the class. And if you sign up for this Saturday, April 15th class this month, the month of March, you get 10% off your registration. By the way, you can also sign up for someone else. If you have a loved one, a father, a son, a brother, a wife, a sister, that you think it's important that they are also hard to convict if they're ever compelled to defend themselves, you can sign up on their behalf. Just put their name in as a student. You can learn more about this course. I have a lengthy video discussing the 100+ specific use of force law questions we answer over the course of the day. You can watch that, make your decision, register at lawofselfdefense.com/advanced. All right, folks, I think that is it for this Saturday, March 11th. Not sure if I'll do a show tomorrow, but if not tomorrow, certainly on Monday. And in any case, remember, if you carry a gun, if you own a gun, so that you're hard to kill, so your family is hard to kill, that's why I own a gun, so my family is hard to kill, so I'm hard to kill. Then you also owe it to yourself and your family to make sure you know the law, so you're hard to convict. Until next time, I remain Attorney Andrew Branker for Law of Self-Defense. Stay safe.